People are starting to talk about Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming today to celebrate my father's life. Some of you will be paying tribute to him, starting with Dad's friend and colleague, Clive Henderson. So Clive, if you wouldn't mind coming to the podium. Thank you, Clive.
TaInton family and friends of Profi, welcome here this afternoon. The other day I received an email from Rena saying, please, could I help and have a little presentation to Neil, which I accepted with great alacrity. But she then added a rider. She said, you've got to keep it short. Remember the Reader's Digest practice of reducing everything almost to a ridiculous amount. I accepted very happily, but I don't think, Rena, I can hold myself to being too short, because this was a man of tremendous stature, and I think it would be cutting him short if we didn't say a fair amount about him. And many of you would know him probably from living here, from your academic side. But I had the great pleasure and honor and privilege of knowing Profi for 60 years. It was 60 years ago that I came down here as a greenhorn to start my career in agriculture. And I joined NUC at the AgFac, which in those days had a world reputation with some magnificent staff there. And in the little speciality that I concentrated on, pasture management and soil conservation, it was led by Professor Hamish Scott, Pete Boyson, and of course Neil TaInton. And his speciality was grasses and pastures. During the time, the 3 years I was under his tutorship at the AgFac, I used to ask him occasionally, do you recall many of the people who passed through your doors of learning? And he gave a rather strange answer. He said, yes, I remember the clever ones and the eager ones, and I try not to remember the lazy ones. And I thought to myself, oh, in this amorphous mass, where do I fit in? So I immediately changed the subject and talked about something else. Little did I imagine at that stage that 25 years ago, in my agricultural venture, I started concentrating more on valuation work and the assessment of fires. And I desperately needed someone to help me in the fodder section. And naturally my mind turned to Professor TaInton, Profi. And I thought, if I go knock on his door, I'll probably fall within that funny little bunch that he won't even want to meet. It was with fear and trepidation that I phoned Rena and said I'd like to come and meet her husband, and she said, do, by all means. And my fears were groundless. I went there and I was received with such a warm welcome from Rena and Profi. And for the 25 years since then, I have always been almost like a member of their lovely family. And Rena and the TaInton family, I can't thank you enough for the privilege you give me today and for your long-standing friendship. When I had to find someone else, I went to Profi and he agreed immediately. And over the last 25 years, it has been a most amazing journey. We've been to all parts of the country. We've been to small little humble farms. We've been to some of the best farms in the country. And wherever we go, I am always absolutely transfixed and amazed with the dignity and the interest that all those people, be they small little one farmers on a ploikie, be they the learned legal profession in their chambers and offices in their palatial buildings in Johannesburg, or be it an imposing judge sitting in the High Court and Profi being in the witness box. They all listened intently, they all listened with dignity, they all were greatly impressed with the way he presented his evidence, his arguments, and I must just mention on one occasion, and I don't think I have ever, in the many times I've been to court, ever witnessed this before, but it was a long and a difficult case, and Profi was in the box for 3 or 4 days, and at the end of that, the judge said, Professor TaInton, you may now stand down, but I would like to say how much I have enjoyed the decorum and the manner in which you have reacted to the cross-examination, the way you've put your evidence back across to us. Thank you so much. You may now stand down. And I think that those few concluding words put forward by a learned judge to a witness is outstanding, and it embodies everything that I have and have always enjoyed with my friendship with Profi. He was a man of total reliability. He was a man who only had one direction, and that direction was the truth. And he had to back it all up, the scientific and the practical knowledge all the time. And I must tell you of a few of the cases. And when I was putting my little spiel together, the last couple of days, I suddenly worked out that in the time that Profi was with me, and in his speciality of fodder, he has been involved in calculating the losses of well over 100 million rand. And that is an enormous amount. It's not just chicken feed this. It was a highly responsible position that he was held in. And we concentrated on fire cases. And to give you an idea of his interest in everything, Chaucer wrote, "Time and tide waits for no men." And Profi, all the way along, was always eager to look into new ways of doing things, to exploring new technology. And that was one of the exciting things about him. He wasn't a civil servant by any stroke of imagination. He was a man of great interest and great drive. And we worked on a couple of novel ideas. We made extensive use of aerial photography, extensive use of satellite imagery, which has come into play recently. And also, in the last few years, we have been using drone photography. And that has made our interpretation of our fires and the catastrophe they cause so much easier. But this particular case was a fire of 1,000 hectares outside Bloemfontein. And they were claiming 1.2 million rands worth of damage. So we were asked to go up there and assess what the damage was. We went up there, and where we were told it was the best example of rooikras, and we used to call Profi at times Mr. Rooikras, because he always liked Thermida triandra, and he said that was the be-all and end-all of all fodder. And they said it was the best example. We went up there, and Profi almost cried. There was no rooikras, there was absolute rubbish. So we were struck in this thing. There were no recent aerial photographs. So we used, probably one of the first times in agriculture, we used a drone and flew this 1,000 hectares. And Profi then put together a vegetation map. And I must tell you that there was a very well-known, highly respected botanist, Aycock, and he mapped the entire South Africa into his vegetation zones. And a lot of the work that went into that mapping was done by Profi during his holidays and vacation times. And that map, right until today, is still the Bible of where are the different vegetation zones in South Africa, and much of that was thanks to Profi. And he took that knowledge and he did a map of this farm, and we calculated where the different vegetation zones were, what were the grazing facilities, and we came out with 800,000 damage. Well, what transpired thereafter was actually farcical. This man put together 6 reports, and at the end, when we went to court, he was claiming for exactly the same parameters, 13 million rand. And Profi was a gentle, knowledgeable man. He very seldom got angry. But when he got angry, his face went ashen white and his eyes came out, and you could just feel them eating into these people who had the audacity of putting forward something absolutely, completely and utterly wrong, and working in the interests of their client and not putting forward evidence on which the judge was going to do the judgment. And so we went to court on the Monday afternoon. Tuesday they came in waving a flag, and the judge, in a very harsh judgment, allocated them 400,000. So it ranged from what we said 800,000, what he said 13 million, and the learned judge giving a judgment of 400,000. When I talk about a case like that, probably some of you think, hell, it must be exciting, it must be interesting. I tell you, it is the most daunting experience. When the advocate gets up and say, "My Lord, I'm now calling my next witness, Professor TaInton," you get up and you walk into that little box and the door goes click, and you know you are stock alien, and you know that those advocates are going to try and draw blood as much as they could. Profi retained his composure right through his evidence, and it was amazing to witness that particular thing. And one of our next really big cases was a farming community at Melbourne. Now, this was not a fire, it was a land claim. And Profi was very involved in that because there was a lot of grass as well. And it took 4 years to do the overall case. It was 10,000 hectares belonging to 6 different communities, all of which were fighting each other as to where was the land going to be distributed. And we had 6 communities, we had 6 advocates, 6 senior advocates, and the judge, and the cost apparently was amounting to something like R500,000 today for the legal costs alone. And we came together, and with that frightening figure behind, all the advocates said, "Look, you have got to get together, both sides, and you've got to work this out. We can't go to court and expect the judge to be able to take the salient points from each of the 6 different communities and put it together." So we worked it out together, and this to say it was one of the biggest ever in South Africa, and the overall settlement was just under R1 billion. And their Profi was outstanding with his knowledge and his composure and his advice. And so we went on. There were other cases, and another case which I'll tell you about was the one similar to the first one, and that was a person who dared to go against the standard norms. And in grazing there are standard norms. An animal will eat so much, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. And Profi was the author of 2 magnificent books, Veld Management and Pasture Management. And I believe that in a lot of the farms, you may even find more of those books, of those volumes, than you will find in the Bible. And they have stood the test of time, and I doubt whether in the foreseeable future there will ever be anyone who has the stature, the knowledge and experience of compiling 2 books which are so well respected. But again, this person came forward and contradicted the norms which are used in this country and the norms which are accepted throughout the world. And it was ludicrous, it was farcical, and eventually we settled with 2 million less than they were claiming. But I must just diverse a little bit and say about Profi. We were doing a court case up in Joburg. It was meant to stop on Friday. It went on, and I said to him, "Well, let's go and stay with my family in Joburg." And he said, "Well, you know, I've got the boss at home, she's on her own. How are we going to move around that?" So I think I took the courage and phoned Rena. She said, "Keep him as long as you like." So we stayed there, and my son-in-law is an East Carpenter, and Profi was an East Carpenter, and they were in second heaven. And the next day I got up and I said, "Profi, I'm taking my 3 grandchildren birthday shopping. Annual birthday shopping. I take my grandchildren in different parts of the world to go and do their Christmas or birthday. Would you like to come?" And Profi was one of those persons who didn't like missing an opportunity to do something different. And off he went. We got to one of these magnificent toy shops. Profi disappeared. Don't know where he went, but he just went into the bowels of the shop. We agreed that we'd meet at the checkout counter in an hour's time. Hour's time, we came there, and I was paying for this thing. Profi came along with 3 presents for each of those individual grandchildren. And they say to me now, "Gramps, waar is daar die oupa?" Hy was 'n lieflike man. And you know, he was generous beyond fault. And one of the many reasons why our friendship had endured for so long. The last thing, which is something unique, and I think it displays his humanity. In a case at Stainsrus, 25 farmers were basically wiped out completely. 30,000 hectares from a faulty Eskom pole, and we had to go up and do the evaluation. And it took quite a long time. And the first thing I'd just like to mention, at the diversity of the farms we went to and the things we had to deal with. It was latish in the evening, the sun was setting, and we were driving around on this game farm. We came around a corner, and there in front of us were 50 buffalo. And the farmer said, "That's 80 million on the hoof there." And it was, Prof and I were absolutely amazed to think 80 million standing there. Thank goodness Cyril wasn't there. He would have had a fit. So we had that wonderful time with my grandchildren, and you know, it's going to be such a very difficult time from now to know whether or not I will continue with my work, because it was a friendship, it was a partnership, it was a thing you couldn't put a value to it, and it's going to be a horrific loss for me. The last few days were obviously a very difficult time for everyone involved so closely with Profi. Rena lost a beloved husband of 60 years. The children lost a loving and knowledgeable father and grandfather. And you and I and all of us here have lost someone in various facets of life whom we're going to miss severely in the near future. And while I was sitting with Profi over the last few evenings in ICU, difficult time seeing your friend slipping away, I was reminded of the Shakespeare sonnet which reads, "Like as the waves make towards the pebbled shore, so do the minutes of my mortal life hasten to their end." And that's life. We've got to accept that's life. And Profi accepted it, Rena's accepted it. Our thoughts, our prayers are with you and your family so much. Hambagasti, my dear friend Profi, and may your soul rest in everlasting peace.
Thanks so much, Clive. Thank you. I'd like to invite my sister to the podium to say a few words. TaInton.
Thanks very much, Clive, for those lovely words. Today we're actually gathered to celebrate the extraordinary life of my father, a man who was truly remarkable in every sense. And what he wanted was for us to celebrate. As many of you know, he was not only a recognized and a respected leader, but also a real expert, as Clive has said, in the field of science that he so passionately pursued. His impact definitely was huge in academia, but it went way beyond the walls of academia, resonating with his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, his students, his colleagues alike. Reflecting on my childhood, I often found myself rather embarrassed when people asked me, "What does your father do?" And the kind of standard answer was, "Well, he works with grass." I really never fully grasped the groundbreaking research that he was undertaking, the research that would have profound implications both here and across the globe. And I'm so grateful to see today some of his legacy. UKZN has brought some of the postgraduate students that are continuing the work that he was so involved in when he was at university in those days. Working with grass, amazing. Those moments that I spent counting how many little pieces of clover there were in a little baggie of grass, Ken, you're nodding, sitting with him at a table, now really stand as cherished memories of the man who changed the landscape of science. The support that we've received from UKZN during this very difficult time has really been invaluable. Their gesture in distributing a beautiful obituary to ecologists worldwide speaks volumes about the legacy that my father leaves behind. Copies of those obituaries are on the table and on the board, and we'd welcome you to read the incredible legacy of my dad's work. We're very grateful for the presence of the UKZN representatives here today, standing alongside us in celebrating Dad's enduring influence. Tomorrow, we, the family, will accompany Dad on his final journey to Ukalinga. Ukalinga, the University Experimental Farm, a place where he started a burning research project over 6 decades ago, a project that continues to shape our understanding of grassland science today. My brothers and I have fond memories of days on the farm with Dad, with me being used as a guinea pig to test if the electric fences were working, and all of us having a lot of fun sitting on his lap and learning to drive on the farm roads. Beyond all of the accolades for this award-winning scientist, world-renowned agriculturalist, ecologist, dean, professor emeritus, fellow of the University of KZN, Neil TaInton was at his core an exceptional human being. The photos that we've spread around the room are a testament to a life that was rich in love and cherished memories, a life that touched countless hearts, particularly those of his beloved wife, his children and their spouses, his grandchildren and some of their spouses, his great-grandchildren who are with us today, each of whom he adored with unwavering devotion. One of you is sitting at a table with a photo of Dad on a beach. It's a black and white photo, and my mother calls that her hunk. So whoever's lucky enough to see the hunk, he was an incredible man, but he was also a beautiful man. The values that guide my life, fairness, justice, integrity, honesty, diligence, and commitment were all instilled by his example. Dad was a man of humility and quiet strength, except when it came to matters of grass and cricket. On those topics he could expound at length. Mom also often reminds me of the very high expectations that he set, reminding us all that every challenge was to be seen as an opportunity for character building. Well, thanks, Dad, this is really character building. For Mom, that included a sabbatical to Kruger Park, where they lived in a caravan in the middle of the bush and had to trek daily through head-high grass, not knowing what wild animal was hiding in anticipation of the next meal. His approach was also vividly demonstrated during a memorable 4-hour family hike to the heart of the Tarawera volcano in New Zealand. I was convinced that this volcano was still likely to erupt, but that day the biting cold couldn't deter him. He really believed that there was a lesson in this for all of us that was worth learning. Mom and I were bundled into a single wind cheater, each of us with one arm through a sleeve, shivering with cold, but we made it, and it was character building. We very quickly learned not to complain, but to push through, just as he did throughout these past 6 years, with grace, with fortitude, and an unwavering dignity that defined his character. Through every step of this remarkable journey, for 64 years, my mother stood as his rock, his unwavering support, and the love of his life. Mom, thank you for the care that you gave to this extraordinary, sometimes demanding, but always beloved father of ours. To those who have supported Mom and Dad through these years, the family really wants to recognize your kindness. It did not go unnoticed. Izzy and Noki, he loved you. Thank you for everything that you did for him and for Mom. And we also want to extend our thanks, Mark, to you and the Nightingale staff and to the staff of the care centre at Amber Valley who have responded every time that there was a need. One of Dad's favourite quotes by Henry David Thoreau, which is displayed in his office, speaks volumes about how he approached life. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. Today we celebrate the life of a true giant, a man who lived deliberately, a brilliant and insatiably curious lifelong learner, a teacher in every sense of the word. His journey was nothing short of amazing, and he added immeasurable value in so many ways. The best tribute we can offer him is to continue striving to make him proud and to hold his memory close in our hearts. Dad, I love you.
I'd like to invite my daughter Lauren to read some of the tributes that have been sent to the family.
I didn't even know it was me. Our cousin Tracy, who is living in Australia, has written the following about Grandpa. Growing up, I never really understood what my grandfather did. I knew he loved watching grass grow and cricket, which is basically the same thing. I knew he was exceptionally intelligent and hoped I got just a few of those genes. But it's not what he did, or his accolades and achievements that made him Grandpa or Pops. It was the quiet man who gave us pony rides and on his leg despite his knee issues, who would let us have a puff of his pipe or a swig of his beer, who taught me how to putt-putt like a pro, who showed us work ethic and wanted us to achieve at school. I wanted to be a lawyer. It didn't eventuate because I was told I wouldn't be able to defend someone I knew was guilty. I believe that strong sense of morals and ethics came from him, except when it came to board games. Then all his morals went out the window and competition stepped in. 30 seconds would be won, cheating or not. When he spoke, you listened, not out of fear, but respect. Grandpa, it breaks my heart that I have not been able to see you since our last encounter 5 years ago. And even more so that my boys didn't really get to know you other than through a screen. Know that your presence is enormous, even in your absence. We love you and we miss you. We all love you so much. Sorry. We all love you so much.
Dad's granddaughter Leanne would like to say a few words. Oh, there you are.
I'm saying a few of other people's words, if I can find them. Hold on a minute. Put them underneath. So the family was family was overwhelmed. I'm meant to be the one who doesn't cry. Okay. The family was overwhelmed with tributes from people online and by message and by email. And so we just wanted to share some of them with you today as well. So the first one is from Mark Graham, aka Chunky, who was a student at Pops. Prof has been a giant in our lives, and that great oak having fallen is heartbreaking. I was just reflecting on his passing now with Craig Morris. And we too were so privileged to have had him as our prof. And that profound influence he has had over and in our lives. And that will never die. He may have left you, Gareth, Ken, your dear mum, Rena, but that great oak has nurtured many seedlings in his life. And a great forest now flourishes in his shadows. That forest can never be cut down, will endure, and reflects his real legacy. And that was from Mark and Louise. The next one is from Clive, his son-in-law, my mother Penny's husband. After meeting Penny in 2006, it was soon time to meet the parents, Neil and Rena. They both made me feel welcome and part of the family. It soon struck me how much of Penny I saw in Neil, or maybe that should be said the other way around. And so it was natural for me to feel great respect and warmth towards Neil. I will give one anecdote. Penny and I felt at first that there was no need to marry. Instead, we would have a commitment ceremony. Neil pondered this and made the point he had never heard of a couple being in a committee. And we have been married for 15 years now. There's another one from a student, Andrew Denton. Neil was a great communicator and leader and quietly inspirational to me and many in our class. The whole AgFac, really. He had a dry sense of humor and was always interesting about so much. He was very demanding academically, but always approachable and looking for pragmatic solutions, pipe in hand. I recall a field visit, probably 1987, somewhere in the Umkomaas Valley, to one of the English farmers, a bad-tempered man, who was quite derogatory when a fresh student naively asked about his burning routine in the Umkomaas Valley bushveld. And your dad just diffused him and said, "That's why we're here, to learn." And we were all very grateful. We all learned so much. Gustav Nick Leroux, an agriculturalist, sent, "Rest in peace to one of the greatest grassland scientists and rangeland ecologists ever. I never had the privilege to directly meet or to be taught by Prof. TaInton, but was taught by the wonderful profs, doctors, students, etc. that he mentored and trained, and that have still had impact on my life so much. The range of books, papers, and knowledge that Prof. TaInton had was unbelievable and truly inspiring. He also had the great ability to make it so practical and applicable to veld, turf, and pasture management, to the end land user. He will be sorely missed by all."
Thank you, Dad.
Doesn't matter.
I'd like to invite my brother Ken to say a few words.
Firstly, I'd really like to thank all of you for coming here today to celebrate the life of my dad, Neil TaInton. Each of you are here because he touched you in one or more ways. As a loving husband, a devoted father and grandfather and great-grandfather, as a dedicated teacher and mentor, as a trusted colleague, and most of all, as a loyal friend. Dad had his own quiet manner, although I can recall a few student parties and a couple of Christmases which were not so quiet by the end of the evening. But somehow, inevitably, he seemed always to be able to get his own way. He would, of course, justify this by claiming that, of course, he was always right, so it was quite straightforward. And in fairness, he was most of the time. But the one exception to this was in the practical aspects of day-to-day life. And I just want to give huge credit to Mum for her tireless work that enabled Dad to follow his passions. She truly was the bedrock of his success. Dad always set high standards, and he encouraged others to continuously strive for perfection, because this is the way that he lived his own life. He wanted nothing more than to see others try their hardest and make the most of every opportunity, as he had done throughout his life. I'd really like, again, to repeat what Penny said and to thank the university for the touching tribute that they sent out earlier this week. And as Leanne has just expressed, it's just incredible how many messages and anecdotes and stories we've received from past students and colleagues reiterating this very point. As a family, we were immensely privileged to benefit from Dad's quiet guidance from an early age. And nothing delighted him more in his later life than to see his children and later his grandchildren and great-grandchildren succeeding in their chosen endeavors. Dad was, at the heart of it, a thoroughly good man. I'm not sure what greater tribute I can pay, and his legacy lives on through all of you. Thank you.
My elder daughter, Megan, would like to read some tributes.
Hi everyone, I'm Megan. I'm Neil's granddaughter. So I'm going to be reading 3 tributes from 3 colleagues. The first one being John Arnaud. He said, Neil and I shared an interest in grassland science that goes back a long time, and he had a great influence on my career after leaving Sadara. Apart from that, I played bowls with you both and eventually obtained 2 sets of bowls from you, one from which I used until I eventually retired a few years ago. Knowing you both has been a great pleasure. Thanks to you and Neil, I started bridge that I'm still enjoying. May you adapt to your present circumstances, and happy thoughts of your time together with Neil. Love, John. The second colleague was John and Liz. They said, Dear Rena, such sad news after all you shared together, but glad he was at home and peaceful. Our thoughts and love are with each of you. It was always such a great privilege and pleasure to interact with you and Neil. So many wonderful memories, he will be sorely missed. Special love to you and for your caring, John and Liz. The third colleague was Prof. Lieb Nievoet, and he said, It is with great sadness that we learnt about Neil's passing away. We would dearly love to be there, but we will be away, unfortunately. I always read the bridge column in The Witness and often see Rena's name as one of the winners. I am impressed with Neil's achievements and remember him as a humble person that we all admire. 2 students also wrote in, one being Winston and Lynn Trollope. They said, Dear Rena, please accept our sympathy at the sad news. Neil was always such an inspiration to us and taught so many students to think logically and laterally. He made such a positive impact in the academic field and on many people's lives. I have always admired you for your loyal and committed support to Neil's career. Take care and best wishes, Lynn. Then Graham Heffer said, I will always have fond memories of Prof when he was my mentor whilst I was doing my doctorate. and I'm reminded of all the outings and the grassland trips, which invariably turned into great getaways with him at the helm. Apart from his first love of grasses, his penchant for sports, especially rugby and cricket, were also legendary, and there was never a time in his office where these subjects were neglected. I know, like me, he'll be sorely missed by his colleagues and friends, but his dedication and devotion to his staff and students will never be forgotten. Prof, thank you for your guidance and fortitude in getting me through my PhD. It has shaped me into the person I am today and opened the opportunities for me that would not have been possible had you not been there to anchor and guide me during this time. May your soul rest in eternal peace and in the big grassland in the sky, Prof. Lenore Schwenk, which is his niece, said, I remember Neil as a quiet, unassuming man. As a little girl, I remember him with his pipe. Distance did not allow us much interaction as we grew older, but in later years we had the opportunity of visiting in Amber Valley and experienced his enthusiasm for an indigenous garden. We also had the opportunity to meet up occasionally when your folks were in transit via OR Tambo, and we got to experience his very dry sense of humor and quick wit. Special memories of a man who has left a huge void in the lives who are close to him. Much love.
Leanne's daughter Jade, so my dad's great-granddaughter, would like to say a few words or read tributes.
Peter Regan, a student, says, Prof. TaInton's lectures on field ecology and management in first year agriculture 110 were so interesting. I also changed from an animal to a pastoral science major and set me up for some of the most inspiring years of my life as an undergrad in that department. Between Prof. Mike Mentons and Dave Bransby, we had a fantastic education and set me on a very rewarding career for the next 40 years. Hamagachle, Prof. You changed many lives for the better. Richard Eckert, another student, said, a bit like you, Peter, I switched up post-grad level as I could not pass up the opportunity to have Prof. TaInton as my PhD supervisor. This was key to opening doors for my future career. Thank you, Prof. TaInton. And Roger Collette, another student, said, Hamagachle, Prof. I can truly say that he changed my life. I was all set to focus on animal science as my major until we had a few lectures by Prof. on grassland science and field management as part of Agriculture 110. From that point, I knew what major I wanted to do, and I can honestly say that 3 years in my grassland science department was some of the happiest of my life, and my life subsequently fell nicely into place because of that qualification. A scholar and a gentleman, besides my own dad, probably the most influential man I have ever been honored to spend time with. Thanks, Prof. I trust that you, being in a better place, will not have to haul out your eyeglass to see the finer details when doing grass ID. Condolences to the family.
And the last set of tributes will be read by Jade's brother, Reese.
From Neil Miles, a student. My sincerest condolences to Rena and the family. Prof was a remarkable man in every way, and he commanded huge respect. Then from Modow Norman Magora, agriculturalist. He was definitely one of Southern Africa's fathers of grassland science. May his soul rest in peace. Then the last one from Richard Hurt, a student. It's as though the center of a huge tussock has died, but has hundreds of younger tussocks around it spreading from the core. Rest in peace, Prof. Condolences to Rena and the family.
If anybody else would like to say anything, you're most welcome. Good. Thank you very much.
I think I knew Neil from (1975). And somebody talked about him going ashen, white in the face. And I saw an event involving Neil that demonstrates the passion that he had for the AgFac. Somebody, and I won't mention the name, decided to do something around the building, the AgFac. And Neil was dean at the time. And he felt that he had the authority to know beforehand that this was planned. And he didn't like it. And he blew a fuse. Not for himself, but for the staff that he represented. So he would often do things for others when, if he didn't do anything, nobody would have noticed. And I think that's the type of individual that Neil had. He had caring for others that he led in a very quiet way until he blew a fuse. And then he became quite loud. Thank you. Thank you.
I think it's time to now begin the celebration. There's plenty of wine and beers at the bar.
And tea and coffee.
And tea and coffee. So thank you everyone for coming and for sharing this day with us.